13 things no one tells you about creatine. Everyone knows the big claims about creatine: bigger muscles, more strength, better workouts, faster recovery. And while those benefits are part of the reason creatine has become one of the most popular supplements in the world, they're not the whole story. What most people don't realize is that creatine comes with a lot of surprises. Things you rarely hear about in advertisements, fitness posts, or supplement reviews. Some of these discoveries are incredibly positive. Others can be confusing if you don't know what to expect, and a few are so unexpected that they catch even experienced users completely off guard. The truth is, creatine is one of the most researched supplements ever studied, yet many people still start taking it without fully understanding what may happen during the first few weeks or months. That's where things get interesting, because some of the biggest lessons about creatine have very little to do with building muscle. They involve hydration, recovery, confidence, mindset, and a few changes that most people never see coming. So today, we're uncovering 13 things no one tells you about creatine. The surprising truths, the overlooked facts, and the things most people only learn through personal experience. And trust me, a few of these may completely change the way you think about this incredibly popular supplement. But before we begin, drop your name and the city you're watching from in the comments below. Alright, let's get started. Number 1, you probably won't feel anything right away. Have you ever started a supplement and expected to feel something happen right away? You're definitely not alone. One of the biggest surprises for new creatine users is how normal they feel at first. Many people take their first scoop and wait for some dramatic effect. They expect a sudden burst of energy, a noticeable rush, or some obvious sign that the supplement is working. Then, a few days pass. Nothing. A week goes by, still nothing. And that's when many people start wondering if they wasted their money. But here's the thing. Creatine doesn't work like caffeine. You won't usually feel it kick in. There's no instant surge of energy or dramatic change that suddenly flips a switch in your body. Instead, creatine works quietly behind the scenes. As you take it consistently, your muscles gradually build up and store more creatine. Over time, those stores become saturated, allowing your body to support performance, strength, and recovery more effectively. The benefits tend to show up slowly. Maybe your workouts start feeling a little stronger. Maybe you recover slightly better between sessions. Maybe you're able to push through an extra repetition without realizing why. Those changes often happen so gradually that many people don't notice them until they look back several weeks later. That's why patience is such an important part of the process. Creatine isn't about instant gratification, it's about small improvements that build over time. And ironically, one of the biggest mistakes people make is quitting too early because they didn't feel anything right away. Sometimes, the most effective supplements are the ones working quietly in the background. Creatine is often one of them. Number 2, the scale may go up before your strength does. Here's something that catches almost every new creatine user off guard. Before they notice better workouts, before they notice more strength, and before they notice improved recovery, they notice the scale going up. And for a lot of people, that can be a little unsettling. You step on the scale one morning and suddenly you're a few pounds heavier than you were a week or two ago. If you weren't expecting it, your first thought might be, wait, am I gaining fat? But in most cases, that's not what's happening at all. One of the primary ways creatine works is by helping your muscles store more water. As your muscle cells become better hydrated, they naturally hold on to additional fluid. That extra water can show up on the scale surprisingly quickly, sometimes within the first couple of weeks. That's why many people notice weight gain before they notice any performance benefits. The interesting part is that this increase in weight is often a sign that creatine is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Your muscles are becoming more hydrated, which can help support strength, performance, and recovery over time. Of course, if nobody warns you about this beforehand, it can feel a little alarming. Many people assume that any increase in body weight must mean they're gaining fat. But that's not always true. In this case, the scale is often reflecting changes in water stored inside muscle tissue, not changes in body fat. That's an important distinction, because once you understand what's actually happening, that sudden jump on the scale becomes much less stressful. In fact, for many users, it's simply one of the earliest signs that creatine is beginning to work. And knowing that ahead of time can save you a lot of confusion and a lot of unnecessary panic. Number 3, bigger muscles don't always mean more muscle. Have you ever looked in the mirror after a couple of weeks on creatine and thought, wait a second, do my muscles look bigger? You're not imagining things. One of the first visible changes many creatine users notice is a fuller, more pumped appearance in their muscles. Shirts may fit a little differently. Your arms, shoulders, or legs might look slightly larger. Even without flexing, your muscles can appear more noticeable than they did before. Naturally, a lot of people get excited. And honestly, who wouldn't? But here's the interesting part. At first, much of that visual change isn't actually coming from brand new muscle tissue. Instead, it's largely the result of increased water being stored inside your muscle cells. One of creatine's primary functions is helping muscles hold more water. As those muscles become better hydrated, they often appear fuller, firmer, and more defined. It's almost like your muscles are being inflated from the inside. That's what creates that early wow moment in front of the mirror. The fascinating thing is that this can happen relatively quickly, often long before significant muscle growth has had time to occur. That's why some people mistakenly believe they've gained several pounds of muscle almost overnight. In reality, real muscle growth still requires consistent training, proper nutrition, and time. But that doesn't mean the visual change isn't real. Your muscles genuinely do look fuller. It's just that the fullness is coming primarily from hydration rather than newly built muscle tissue. And while that may sound less exciting, it's actually part of the reason many people love creatine. It provides an early visual sign that something is happening. And for many users, seeing that change in the mirror becomes a powerful source of motivation to keep training, stay consistent, and continue working toward their long-term goals. Number 4. Hydration suddenly becomes more important. Now here's something that deserves a lot more attention than it gets. When most people think about creatine, they focus on muscles, strength, and workout performance. What they don't realize is that creatine also changes how water is distributed throughout the body. One of the reasons creatine works so effectively is that it helps your muscles hold more water. That's great for muscle hydration and performance, but it also means your body may need more fluids than it did before, and this is where some people run into trouble. A few weeks after starting creatine, they begin feeling unusually tired. Their workouts feel harder than expected. They develop headaches, feel sluggish throughout the day, or just don't feel quite right. Naturally, they assume creatine is causing the problem. But in many cases, creatine isn't the issue at all. Their hydration habits are. Think about it. If your muscles are storing more water, your body may require more fluids to maintain balance. If you're still drinking the same amount of water you were before starting creatine, you may not be keeping up with your body's new demands. The good news is that this is often one of the easiest problems to fix. For many people, simply paying more attention to hydration can make a noticeable difference in how they feel. More energy, fewer headaches, better workouts, and a much smoother experience overall. That's why experienced creatine users often treat their water bottle like part of their supplement routine, because proper hydration and creatine go hand in hand. The supplement didn't suddenly become a problem. The real issue was that their body needed more water, and nobody told them. Once they figured that out, everything started making a lot more sense. Number 5. Not everyone gets the same results. Have you ever noticed how one person talks about creatine like it's the best supplement they've ever used, while someone else shrugs and says they barely noticed a difference? It can be confusing, but there's a simple explanation. People respond differently. No two bodies are exactly alike, and several factors can influence how noticeable creatine's effects will be. Genetics play a role, diet matters, exercise habits matter, muscle mass matters. Even the amount of creatine your body naturally stores before you start supplementing can affect your results. That's why some users seem to notice improvements fairly quickly. They may feel stronger, recover better, or see changes in their workouts within a few weeks. Others experience benefits that are much more subtle, and that's completely normal. The important thing is not to compare your results to someone else's highlight reel. What matters is whether you're making progress compared to where you started. Creatine isn't a one-size-fits-all experience. For some people, the changes are dramatic. For others, they're gradual and harder to notice. But different doesn't mean ineffective. It simply means your body is responding in its own way, and that's exactly what should be expected. Number 6. You might recover better than expected. Here's one of the most underrated things about creatine, and it's probably not what most people expect. Ask someone why they started taking creatine, and they'll usually say the same thing: I wanted bigger muscles. And that's understandable. Muscle growth gets most of the attention, but for many users, the benefit that ends up making the biggest difference isn't muscle size at all, it's recovery. After a few weeks of consistent use, many people notice that workouts don't leave them feeling quite as beaten up as before. Their muscles may feel fresher between training sessions, and they often feel more ready to exercise again sooner. The change isn't always dramatic. You probably won't wake up one morning feeling completely transformed. Instead, it's often a collection of small improvements. Maybe yesterday's workout doesn't leave you sore for quite as long. Maybe you're able to return to the gym feeling stronger instead of exhausted. Maybe staying consistent with exercise simply feels easier, and that's where recovery becomes a real game changer. Because the best workout program in the world won't help much if you're too tired, sore, or drained to stick with it. When recovery improves, consistency often improves too, and over time, consistent workouts lead to better results than occasional perfect workouts ever could. That's why so many experienced creatine users end up talking less about bigger muscles and more about how good they feel between workouts. Sometimes the most valuable benefit isn't pushing harder, it's recovering better, so you can keep showing up week after week and continue making progress. Number 7. The biggest benefits are often small at first. Want to know a secret that most people don't realize about creatine? The biggest benefits usually don't arrive with a dramatic wow moment. You don't wake up one morning feeling superhuman. You don't suddenly double your strength overnight. And you probably won't experience some magical transformation after your first week. Instead, creatine tends to work in much smaller, quieter ways. Maybe you squeeze out one extra repetition during a workout. Maybe you feel slightly stronger on your last set. Maybe you recover a little faster and feel more ready for your next training session. Maybe you're a little less tired at the end of the day. At first, those changes can seem almost too small to matter. In fact, many people barely notice them. But that's exactly where creatine's real power lies. Those tiny improvements begin stacking on top of each other day after day, workout after workout, and month after month. One extra rep becomes dozens. A slightly stronger workout becomes hundreds of better training sessions over time. Small improvements in recovery lead to greater consistency, and consistency is what creates long-term results. That's why experienced users often say creatine is less about dramatic breakthroughs and more about steady progress. The benefits may seem small in the moment, but given enough time, those small advantages can add up to results that are anything but small. Number 8. Taking more doesn't mean better results. This is one of those lessons that many beginners end up learning the hard way. When people first start taking creatine, it's easy to fall into the more is better mindset. After all, if 5 grams can help improve performance and support muscle growth, then 15 or 20 grams should work even better, right? Not necessarily. In fact, taking excessive amounts often creates more problems than benefits. Instead of speeding up your progress, huge doses may increase the chances of bloating, stomach discomfort, digestive issues, or that unpleasant feeling that your body simply isn't happy with what you're doing. That's because creatine isn't a supplement where bigger doses automatically produce bigger results. Your muscles can only store so much, and trying to force the process usually doesn't give you a meaningful advantage. What often surprises people is that the individuals who get the best long-term results are rarely the ones taking massive scoops every day. They're the ones who keep things simple. They take a reasonable amount consistently, they stay hydrated, they train regularly, and they trust the process. When it comes to creatine, consistency is usually far more important than quantity. A small daily habit that you follow for months will almost always outperform an aggressive strategy that leaves you feeling uncomfortable and frustrated. So, before you reach for an extra scoop, remember this: more isn't always better. Sometimes the smartest approach is also the simplest, and with creatine, consistency almost always beats excess. Number 9. Your confidence may improve. Now, here's something you'll never see listed on a creatine label: confidence. Most people start taking creatine hoping for physical results. They want more strength, better workouts, improved performance, or maybe a little extra muscle. But as those improvements start showing up, something unexpected often happens. They begin believing in themselves more. Maybe they're lifting weights that once felt impossible. Maybe they're recovering better and staying consistent with their workouts. Maybe they're simply noticing that everyday activities feel easier than they used to. Those small victories add up, and with every bit of progress, people often start feeling stronger, not just physically, but mentally too. They feel more capable, more motivated, more willing to challenge themselves. And because they're feeling encouraged, they're more likely to stick with healthy habits, stay active, and continue showing up, even on days when motivation isn't perfect. That's where the magic really happens. The physical improvements help create confidence, and that confidence helps create consistency. Then consistency leads to even better results. It's a powerful cycle. In many cases, the biggest transformation isn't what happens to someone's muscles, it's what happens to their mindset. Because once people start seeing proof that their body can improve, they often stop focusing on limitations and start focusing on possibilities. And honestly, that's a benefit no supplement company can put on a label. Yet for many people, it ends up being just as valuable as any physical result they achieve. Number 10. Creatine doesn't replace hard work. This may sound obvious, but it's one of the most important things to remember about creatine. Creatine is a tool, not a miracle. It won't do your workouts for you, it won't replace a balanced diet, it won't make up for poor sleep or inconsistent habits, and it certainly won't create results all by itself. What creatine does exceptionally well is support the things that already drive progress. It can help you get a little more out of your workouts, it may support recovery, strength, and performance. But those benefits work best when they're built on a solid foundation of healthy habits. Think of creatine as a helpful teammate rather than the star player. The real heavy lifting still comes from regular exercise, good nutrition, proper hydration, and adequate rest. That's why the people who often see the best results aren't necessarily the ones taking the most creatine. They're the ones who consistently show up, train, eat well, recover properly, and stay committed to the process. Creatine simply helps support those efforts. So if you're looking for a shortcut, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you're already working toward your goals and want something that can help support your progress, creatine can be a valuable addition to your routine. Because at the end of the day, the supplement works best when it's paired with a healthy lifestyle, not used as a replacement for one. Number 11. Many side effects are actually user mistakes. Have you ever heard someone say, "Creatine gave me headaches," or "Creatine made me feel bloated and tired"? It happens all the time, and while creatine sometimes plays a role, the supplement itself often gets blamed for problems it didn't actually cause. In many cases, the real issue is something much simpler. Maybe they're not drinking enough water. Maybe they're taking far more creatine than they need. Maybe they expected dramatic results overnight and became frustrated when progress took time. Or maybe they're using it inconsistently and wondering why they're not seeing the benefits they hoped for. The interesting thing is that many of the most common complaints associated with creatine are often linked to how it's being used rather than the supplement itself. That's a very important distinction, because if the problem is poor hydration, excessive dosing, unrealistic expectations, or inconsistent use, the solution may be much easier than people realize. Instead of giving up on creatine entirely, a few simple adjustments can often make a huge difference. Understanding the difference between a true side effect and a usage mistake can save a lot of unnecessary frustration. And for many people, it's the key to having a much better experience with one of the most researched supplements in the world. Number 12. Older adults may benefit more than they expect. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Creatine isn't just for bodybuilders, gym enthusiasts, or young athletes trying to gain muscle. In fact, some of its most valuable benefits may become even more important as we get older. As the years go by, maintaining muscle mass, strength, balance, and overall physical function becomes a bigger priority. Everyday activities like carrying groceries, climbing stairs, getting out of a chair, or staying active with family can become more challenging when muscle strength starts to decline. That's why many adults over 50 and 60 are becoming interested in creatine. Not because they're trying to look like professional athletes, but because they want to stay strong, active, and independent for as long as possible. When combined with regular exercise and healthy habits, creatine may help support those goals by assisting with strength, performance, and muscle function. And that's a benefit that often gets overlooked. Most advertisements focus on bigger muscles and athletic performance, but for many older adults, the real value is much simpler. It's about staying active, moving with confidence, and continuing to do the things they enjoy without feeling limited by age. Sometimes, the most important benefit of creatine isn't helping you perform better in the gym. It's helping you stay capable and active in everyday life. Number 13. The biggest thing no one tells you about creatine. And finally, let's talk about the most important truth of all. Creatine isn't special because it promises miracles. It's special because it's dependable. In a world full of supplements that claim to transform your body overnight, creatine stands out for a very different reason. It doesn't rely on flashy promises or unrealistic expectations. Instead, it has something far more valuable behind it: decades of research and real-world results. Will creatine completely change your life in a week? Probably not. Will you wake up tomorrow with dramatically bigger muscles? Almost certainly not, but that's not the point. The real value of creatine is that it consistently supports the things that matter most: better workouts, improved performance, enhanced recovery, and long-term progress when combined with healthy habits. The people who see the best results aren't usually looking for shortcuts. They're exercising regularly, eating well, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and showing up consistently. Creatine simply helps support those efforts. And over time, those small advantages can add up to meaningful improvements in strength, fitness, muscle health, and overall quality of life. The results may not be flashy, they may not happen overnight, but they're real. And honestly, that's far more valuable than any quick fix ever could be. Because lasting progress isn't built on miracles. It's built on consistency, and creatine can be a reliable part of that journey. So, those are 13 things no one tells you about creatine. From water weight and hydration needs to improved recovery, confidence, and long-term consistency, creatine affects the body in more ways than most people realize. The key is understanding what to expect so you can avoid common mistakes and get the most out of it. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever tried creatine? And which of these 13 surprises caught you off guard the most? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.